fought the fight, breaking down the walls in the dead of night. I don't come for peace, I come for the storm. Fanboys melt quick when the truth gets warm. Saw content's high, I'm collecting those tears. Just got started, but I'm cutting through fears. I'm not here for brand deals, I'm not for sale. I expose your lies, rip off the veil.
Well folks, the official data sales for Legends ZA is in. But before we get into it, please hit the like button and the hype button as well. It really helps out small channels like mine to be able to stand up to the greedy corporations and the toxic fanboys. The conversation around this game has been twisted, manipulative, and drowned out by the wave of fanboy denial. And at some point, someone has to say what's really going on. Because the industry sure won't, and the fan base definitely won't. They're too busy clinging to a single line from a headline like it's gospel truth. Legends ZA launched with a lot of noise, a lot of corporate framing, and a lot of expectations placed on it. It was supposed to be a major step forward. It was supposed to redeem the damage left behind by Scarlet and Violet. It was supposed to build on the momentum of Arceus. And instead what we got was the worst selling Pokemon RPG since Let's Go and Eevee. Even though the Switch 2 gave it a larger install base, it had an extra day of tracking, and even though Pokemon as a brand is still one of the strongest IPs on the planet, that alone should have told people something, but the reaction wasn't to ask why, the reaction was to bury it. The reaction was to insist that everyone who brought it up was hating, lying, misleading, or not understanding the context. Meanwhile, the context was coming from Pokemon's own official numbers, not estimates, not speculation, their actual numbers. But here's the part that really exposes the delusion. People rushed to one single stat, that it was the best-selling physical game of the year, and used that line like a shield. They ignored the word physical. They ignored the fact that physical sales barely represent the reality of the gaming market in 2025. They ignored that PC is nearly 100% digital. They ignored that Xbox is now centered almost entirely on digital and Game Pass. They ignored that PlayStation has been pushing digital for years because the margins are higher. They ignored every other metric and clung to that one narrow detail because it was the only thing that had made them feel vindicated. But the wider data shows something completely different. When you take all formats into account, Legends ZA was not the best-selling game of the month. It wasn't the best-selling game of the year. And when it faced actual competition, games that had real momentum, real marketing impact, and real technical competence, it fell behind. Digimon's new title even made a surprise appearance on the charts, putting pressure on a franchise that is supposed to steamroll everything in its path. And even then, fanboys kept insisting that everything was fine. What's worse is that when analysts describe Legends ZA as underperforming compared to Arceus, the immediate reaction wasn't to reflect or question, it was to deny reality. But think about it, small map, flat visuals, technical limitations that don't belong in 2025, a formula that was supposed to evolve but clearly didn't, a franchise that promised a fresh approach but couldn't escape the same issues that had defined Game Freak's last several attempts at going open world. Some people try to blame the new combat system, but that doesn't hold up. Most honest reviews say the real-time combat was one of the most interesting ideas. People didn't reject the combat, they rejected the presentation. They rejected a world that looked outdated on day one. They rejected another half step forward that didn't meet modern standards. They rejected a game that still feels like it was built on a foundation that hasn't fully evolved past the 3DS era. And when the October sales numbers hit, the truth became impossible to deny. Battlefield 6 cleared 7 million in 3 days. Pokemon 5.8 million first week numbers suddenly didn't look impressive anymore. An entire month of fanboy chest pounding over the best physical launch since Tears of the Kingdom evaporated as soon as real competition entered the stage. Then the year-to-date rankings came out, and now we know exactly where Legends ZA really lands. Without digital data, it doesn't even crack the top 20. And with digital estimates included, the best projection puts it somewhere between 10 and 15, maybe 12, maybe 13, maybe even 15, but nowhere near the myth that the fanboys pushed. And what's even more striking is this journalists who were too afraid to speak critically at launch, journalists who tiptoed around the Pokemon community because they know how vicious it can be, have finally started turning around and telling the truth. Now they feel comfortable saying the map is small. Now they feel comfortable admitting exploration is disappointing. Now they raise questions about the lack of voice acting. Now they acknowledge that no new Pokemon being added was a major letdown. Now they say the visuals are flat. Now they finally point out what people were trying to say from day one. It took a month for honesty to become safe, and that alone shows you how twisted the ecosystem around Pokemon has become. Honest criticism is treated like betrayal, genuine disappointment is treated like blasphemy, numbers from the Pokemon company itself are dismissed unless they serve fanboy narratives. And instead of confronting the reality that the franchise is slipping, the fan base responds by attacking everyone who dares to say it out loud. That's why the game underperformed. Not because players hate real-time combat, not because of the same overly complicated theory, but because people looked at it, compared it to what modern games offer, and said this isn't enough. And if the community continues to make excuses, then nothing will change. Scarlet and Violet sold well and sent the wrong message. Sword and Shield sold well and sent the wrong message. Now Legends ZA sold well enough and it'll send the same message again. Quality doesn't matter, nostalgia will carry everything. Until the fan base stops absorbing mediocrity, the franchise won't grow. Until people demand more, nothing will improve. Until players realize that the joy of Pokemon doesn't have to come at the expense of basic quality standards, this cycle will continue to repeat. Once Battlefield 6 became the best-selling game of 2025, that single lifeline the fanboys held onto was dead. Completely gone. Legends ZA losing that one title removed the last piece of their argument. And what happened next was predictable. People suddenly became silent. Some shifted the goalpost, some pretended they never said what they said, some ignored the new data entirely, and some of the same people who were screaming about best-selling physical launch started trying to soften their tone. But if a franchise is massive as Pokemon launches its first real-time action RPG and it still ends up trailing behind a shooter by millions of units in mere days, that isn't a small detail. That's a massive indicator of public confidence. And the year-to-date charts make it even clearer. Being possibly 10th to 15th for the year after a month of hype shows that something isn't connecting with the broader gaming audience. Then you look at the discussions happening online. Subreddits dedicated to holding Nintendo and Pokemon accountable were full of people who were disappointed, frustrated, or simply tired. Tired of being strung along, tired of watching a franchise they grew up with stagnated, tired of watching the same shortcuts, the same technical flaws, the same lack of ambition. Across those discussions, the same themes keep coming up. People don't hate Pokemon as a concept, they hate how the companies behind it operate. They hate that the game looks rushed, they hate the lack of artistic evolution, they hate that the visuals never match modern expectations, they hate how the franchise hides behind nostalgia instead of rising to meet its potential, and they hate that the loudest voices defending the games don't care about quality. As long as a monster ball rolls, as long as a familiar melody plays, as long as Pikachu pops up somewhere, all criticism is dismissed instantly. It's the same problem that plagues sports games, brand loyalty overpowering standards. These games are made for people who will buy them regardless of quality, not for people who want meaningful improvement, and when the loudest offenders refuse to admit the obvious, the people who want better are forced to watch something they love get dragged further into mediocrity. And then ironically, when people criticize Pokemon, the fanboys act like the critics are ruining the franchise, when in reality their blind support is the reason the franchise is slipping. This cycle repeats every generation. A game releases with technical issues, critics speak up, fanboys drown them out, analysts reveal disappointing numbers, fanboys dismiss them, journalists get braver as time passes, the truth slowly surfaces. But before I go, yes, selling as many as Legends ZA did is actually impressive, but when you compare it to the other Pokemon games, it's not. That's just something that the fanboys don't want to accept. They want to continue to run around damage controlling because they only get views when they're hyping up slop like Pokemon Legends ZA or when they're trying to discredit people like us. They don't get views based upon what they enjoy. If they did, they would have been hyping up Kirby Air Riders, or they would have been hyping up Age of Imprisonment. But if you notice, they're quiet as a church mouse, barely even talking about the games that actually should be hyped up. They're too busy running around damage controlling for slop games like Legends EA. And that's it for the video. If you truly enjoyed it, do me a favor and hit the like button, hit the hype button, share it around, and make sure you're subscribed. I post a long video every day, and I also go live Monday morning at 5 a.m. Pacific time, where I react to the saltiest fanboys around. And also, make sure you subscribe, because I'm really trying to hit 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I really need your help. If you really want to support the channel, consider becoming a member. It's only $1 a month. You'll get special badges, custom emotes, and of course your name shouted at the end of every video. And once that list gets too long, don't worry, I will turn it into a full-on credit roll so everybody gets their chance to shine. Also, don't forget to check out the merch if you want to rep the Vigilante Fire. And as always, until next time guys, stay vigilant. And now it's time to read off the members of the channel. We got Koros Objective, Maximilian Pegasus 88, Mad Fox 94, Dr. Downvote, Oh Noah's Justin, Brian Payne, Andy Ritz, Sea Stars Piplup, Jay Wesby 65, Geezer Noob, Dustin 360, That PlayStation Gamer, Stephen Ramey, Matthew Buckley, Johnny Bones Jones, The One and Only Groot, Female Goku, Kasaria, Vetful Zexel, General Raihahuka, CM, Eden Force, Pokeplay, Starlight Mirror, Crystal Woe, Phoenix Freestar, The More Incredible Grimlock, Ninja Pat 15, T-Man the Cool, Karia Lunar, Ronan Reef 90, Shadow Dragons, Brandon Alex, Mr. Krabs and Art, Back Edge, Nightfall Hero Academy, Vega Bar, GTF, Switch Addiction, and Kiwi Kato. Thank you so much for becoming part of the crew.
You can cry in the comments, but you won't survive. Like and subscribe if you feel that vibe. We're